Is there an item that a member of the commission would like removed from the consent agenda? Is there an item that the member of the public would like removed from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to add claims to vendors of $2,270,652.66. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sum, seconded by Vice Mayor Amix. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes 5-0. City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Commission. I'm going to go through a few items in this week's report. Sidewalks remain an important part of not only our infrastructure, but our neighborhoods. So we are continuing to devote resources to sidewalk improvements. You see there where we did work at the intersection of 14th and Tennessee, and then we also filled in a number of gaps along 23rd Street between Mass and Iowa. So continuing to put public resources into this important part of our community and important community infrastructure. As you all know, we opened up the parking garage at Vermont Street. You see a short report there as well. A number of punch list items remain, but it is open for public use. We're also continuing to look at options on the payment system, and we'll have a recommendation to you once that work is completed. Had our utility department recognized and our water quality manager, Aurora Shields, recognized at a state conference. The state section of the American Water Works Association, so we appreciate their work. And on the theme of good water, we had good success with the Pooch Plunge, and there's a report in regards to that. I want to encourage you, if you have time on home computers, to take a look at a new effort that we have started through our communications office under Megan's leadership, but a lot of great work from Mark and Cole in regards to a new video segment that we're going to produce on a monthly basis. Lawrence in Focus. I think it's a very high quality production. Certainly gets a lot of good information out. So I want to encourage you all to take a look at that. We're going to be doing a lot of community outreach so that members of the community can know about that and learn a lot more about the various things that is happening in the community and happening with the city. And finally, Jimmy Wilkins and Stan Aldridge in our Public Works Department did some work at the Senior Services Center. It's a building that we own and Douglas County Senior Service Center uses, but we did some work there that I know that was greatly appreciated by the Senior Center. Be happy to respond to any questions or comments you all have.
Dave, the video's fantastic, and I just want to commend you and Megan, Mark, and Cole for their hard work. Great work, gentlemen, and thanks for doing that. I would, any of us that have social media capabilities, I would encourage us to share that and get the word out, because it highlights a lot of the things that happen that maybe go unseen, that maybe aren't talked about in public meeting, and or that are talked about and not recognized their full potential as we could. So just wanted to throw that out there. But gentlemen, great job, and I think this is a great next step to help with community outreach for our city.
I would agree with Jeremy. As running for city commission, I talked to a lot of people, and once they got the information, I think they were more pleased than not. And as a city commissioner, I'm amazed at the number of good things that we do from the entire staff, and I think if people realize that more, they'd understand the quality of things that are going on in this city. So,
Indeed.
I was also pleased with the screen presence of a lot of city employees. I thought they did a really nice job.
They did well, and I think the report on the sidewalks is excellent too. I think we've done some good job, good work on 23rd Street, getting some continuity built into there so people can actually walk. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the regular agenda items, and I want to point out two things. If you could remember to silence your cell phone for the duration of the meeting, that would be great. And then also, there's a time limit of 4 minutes per item for public comments. If you have comments, you'll hear this, and at around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, if you could try to wrap up your time, I'd appreciate it. First item on the agenda is to conduct a public hearing to consider the vacation of the public right-of-way easement at 1800 Naismith Drive.
Good evening. My drawing is full-size 8.5 by 11, so it kind of extends beyond what this will zoom out to. So, but anyway, Bromley Naismith LLC is really cleaning up their plat and their site plan. As you can see, Naismith Hall has been using the entire site, including what is dedicated as alleyway for a number of years. Basically, the request is to vacate the alley and all the way down to 19th Street. We will reserve, or ask the commission to reserve an easement for utilities and pedestrians. We did contact all the property owners within a 200-foot radius, as well as all the utilities, and received no comment. Your action tonight would be to open the public hearing, pending the city commission discussion, approve the order of vacation, reserving those utility and pedestrian easements. I can answer any questions if you have some.
Yes, Bob.
So there's really no change than what's been happening in the past, it's just
Just
being
cleaning it up.
vacated so the legal.
Yep. Their
Comments
site
from
plan
the-
encompasses the whole, its site plan is one tract. It was just something that was missed way back when.
Any other questions for Chuck?
You want a motion to open?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to open the public hearing on the vacation
Second.
request.
Motion to open the public hearing by Vice Mayor Amick, seconded by Commissioner Shum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The public hearing is open. Is there any public comment on this item?
Mayor, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing by Commissioner Shum, seconded by Commissioner Farmer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Any comments, questions?
It's pretty simple and straightforward, Mayor. I'd make a motion to approve the vacation of the public right-of-way.
Second.
Motion to approve vacation of the public right-of-way by Vice Mayor Amick, seconded by Commissioner Shum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is consider approving a temporary use of public right-of-way permit for the Granada, allowing the closure of the 1000 block of Massachusetts Street on Thursday, September 26, 2013, from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jonathan Douglas, City Clerk and Assistant to the City Manager. Mayor, you explained the basics of the request already. Just to add to that, there's about 72 parking stalls on that block. Parking would be, they would bag the meters 24 hours in advance, typically is how we would do that. Parking would be allowed up until 4 o'clock. There's a label on the meters that says that. At 4 o'clock, the street would be barricaded, and they would display a movie on that block. It is worth note that all alcohol sales, possession and consumption would be confined to the private parking lot that is off of the public right-of-way. No alcohol would be on the public right-of-way. We did mail a letter, as Commissioner Shum requested, to all the properties on Massachusetts Street from 6th Street, from 6th all the way to North Park Street. We received some emails which were attached to your agenda packet, and then I printed out a few more that came in late today and put those on your desks for you to see, and you may have received separate correspondence that I did not. I'd be happy to answer questions. The applicant, Mike Logan, is here as well, and would be happy to answer questions, I'm sure.
Very good. Questions for Jonathan? Thank you. Frank, would you come in?
Hello, Commissioners, Mayor Dever. I'm Mike Logan, the owner of the Granada. As Jonathan outlined, I've asked to close the street for a period of 7 hours to celebrate a number of milestones for the Granada. I've owned the Granada for 10 years. It's been hosting live events for 20 years, and it's been a fixture as an entertainment venue in the community for 80 years. I will recognize that I did process this request a bit later than special permits of this type would be requested, but I have to thank the City Clerk's Office, the Planning Department, and Fire and Police for being absolutely thorough and expediting our request to the agenda. I'm happy to take questions about the request.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions? Yeah.
What's the Granada's economic impact to our community? I mean, you guys bring in a lot of, bands and how many people come downtown to view your shows?
On an average month, anywhere from 15 to 20,000 patrons will come through our doors. From an economic impact standpoint, there's the sales and excise tax, but Granada spends several $1,000s a month marketing outside of Douglas County, bringing in outside dollars. Half of our ticket sales are sold outside of Douglas County, which surprises many when I give them that stat. Additionally, and this is kind of a neat thing that most people don't know, the month of September I went through and just marked out, we will hand bands a per diem or a buyout catering budget when they come to town. The month of September will be $13,000 that we hand bands, and they hop off the bus and walk downtown, shop, eat, whatever it may be. Answer your question.
Great. Any other questions for Mike? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there public comment on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is KT Walsh, and I am proud to serve with Mike and with Commissioner Shum on the Cultural District Task Force. And although we haven't come to you with our final report yet, one of the things we've been talking about consistently is more cultural activities downtown, and this is exactly the kind of thing we've been talking about. Family-friendly, taking the place of the movies that were at 9th and New Hampshire, and celebrating a long-term music venue. So I would just like to speak in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other public comment this evening on item 2? Okay, seeing none, we're back to commission. Any comments or questions?
There's Jonathan, a question. On the agenda item, on our packet, it says correspondence, but all I saw was a letter from Mike Logan. Were there other letters? I saw the 3 you had copied off and posted here tonight at our desk.
Yes, if you refresh your screen right now, you should likely see some other ones. During one of the updates, the link went to the wrong thing, and it should be corrected now.
You can get them from the top, too.
Do you want to go to this computer, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can.
That's right. Good correspondence, yes.
Well, it's displaying correctly on my machine there.
Yep. It's working. Did you refresh?
This button right here should refresh it. But
You have to be outside the link when you refresh. Try that.
There you
Yep.
go. Thank you, Mayor,
You're
for
welcome.
that.
So Jonathan, did you count any negative responses to this item?
I saw one negative response received by email. One other person called, and I thought she was going to send a negative response, but I never received anything.
Okay. Okay, so the one from Carolyn Richmond is the one you're talking about? That was
Yes.
negative, okay. And I think we got a couple more emails today that aren't included in this packet. I think right towards the end of the day, we got 2 or 3 more emails.
I saw one from downtown Lawrence.
Mhm.
I think that was the only one I saw after that I had printed for you.
Okay. Melissa Smith. celebration in here? It's another one from Melissa Smith.
Don't believe that I got that one.
Fatso's.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fatso's is one of the ones I printed and put on
Oh,
your
that
desk.
you handed out?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
A number of these came in after we did the last.
Too much. Okay, that's good, yes.
Last
it's
update, so.
Exactly, these are the ones. All right, great. All right, so is there any commissioner comment on whether or not they're in favor of or would like any changes to this?
Mayor, we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about when it's appropriate to close, the street for special celebrations. I think Mr. Logan's done, a pretty good job of trying to limit the time and take it as much out of the business day and have it as an opportunity for, a family kind of deal. Picked, I guess, a good movie and it's supposed to be good for everybody. Sounds like something that could be a positive, but here again, in the discussions we've had in the past is when is it appropriate to close the street? I think there's a number of people that would talk about that it's, you don't want to make it hard to do business in downtown, so you want to make sure that the promotions that we do have do exactly that, is to promote the downtown, bring more people into downtown and make it a good time for everybody. I have, had a couple comments, as probably everybody's had, or maybe some of you had over the last week about this. But all in all, I think that you've done a pretty good job on trying to limit the time and the effect it's going to have on the day business for everybody. That 1 hour, I think, hopefully a number of people are going to be able to find parking and be able to finish out their day. I think this can be a positive, but I do think as Commissioner Shum and with the new organization that we probably ought to talk about policy somehow, the appropriateness of what has to happen or what we take into consideration on closing Massachusetts Street. I think it's probably time that we do that. We have a great number of events. A lot of people want to use, our downtown or the areas in and around our downtown for a number of events. So I think that, it's probably time that we have some, policy as to when to do it and when not to do it.
I agree. The ironic thing about this is we've done such a good job of creating a real bona fide market-driven downtown, and it is rather unique that now more and more people want to hold activities there, and some of the activities actually do conflict with the commerce. Sometimes it supports it, sometimes it's in conflict, but I agree with you. There are times we can do this, and to minimize the amount of closure on Massachusetts streets and the best advantage of everyone. To the most part, we've been able to do that. We've been on the side streets, we've been in the area between the two parks, South Park, and it's worked. We tried it with the auto exhibition. Exhibit, and that worked fine. So doing it again and again. So no, I'm in agreement that I wanted to see what the email said. I had one person who was boldly against it, and then I had another person who was genuinely jumping up and down saying we've got to do it. So those are my two face-to-face comments.
It's probably the two I had. So
Yeah. So the only concern I have, and I sound is the parking but I don't see how you're going to do it any other way. It'd be a safety issue if you allow people to park and want to get out. So. But we do have a new garage that's open, and maybe some of those people will park over there, take up the slack.
Anything to add?
I think the fact that the owners of businesses on this block were very much in favor of this and nearby, I think that's a very important aspect. The fact that this is a one-time thing, that we're not doing it for multiple years, I think is important. And I agree with Mike in that we should have some type of criteria that we can set forth. That might be difficult to do, but I think we can do some things. But when you have a large number of people and you can celebrate the downtown in a safe way, I think we should encourage it.
I agree with the comments. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, we had our project graduation party at the Granada, and our high school friends had another name for it at that point. And Mike's just done a great job in making that venue just a positive thing, and does so many charitable things for our community, and with the Granada, and also with Abe and Jake's too. And you know, this is a celebration, if I understood it right, 20 years of being there and holding, you know, different events and venues, and of course, as Mike said, been showing movies and so forth for 80 years. And so this is this is to me a cause for celebration and the economic impact. And I asked that question because, you know, if you're ever downtown when the Granada has a show, you just see a lot of people. And so to me, there was no way that everybody was going to kind of fit in that side lot. And this is something that I'm proud to support. And Mike, thanks for your work and making the Granada something that we're proud of in this community. And you know, I'm looking forward to being down there for that event, and watching the Goonies. Of course, it's going to be a great movie. And so, but you know, hopefully with these sort of things, I mean, I agree with what Bob said. I mean, well, I think Terry too. I mean, we didn't hear a lot of comments from the businesses around saying don't do this, and I think that's a big piece of the criteria of, you know, a business wanting to do something. If the comments were overwhelmingly negative, then that should give us pause, in my opinion, to, you know, to look at it again. But I've heard nothing but positive things from the, you know, 5 or so people that I've spoken with, and haven't heard one person say that this wasn't something that we should do, other than the one email that we received.
Yeah. If this was just about showing a movie, I may be driven to move it off onto a side street, but this is celebrating an icon downtown, and of course, it's a new generation as a music venue, something that Lawrence is rich in, and we need to make sure everyone knows about it, young and old. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this. Is there a motion to approve this item?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Shum, seconded by Commissioner Reardon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks. The next item on the agenda is to consider a request to establish a crosswalk with a pedestrian hybrid beacon on 11th Street at Delaware.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. At the August 5th Traffic Safety Commission meeting, they heard a request to establish a crosswalk and pedestrian hybrid beacon at the intersection of 11th and Delaware. Traffic data collected in July found the 85th percentile speed of traffic to be just over 34 miles an hour. And based on that, you would have to have a gap in traffic of just over 600 feet in either direction for a pedestrian to safely cross the street. There was no one from the public that appeared at the commission meeting to speak either in favor or opposed to the request. So therefore, there was very little discussion by the commission, but there was a motion to deny the request. It passed 7-2, and the 2 commissioners that voted against that were concerned because this location is adjacent to a city park, and they were also concerned about the long distance in each direction to a safe crossing for any pedestrians that wanted to cross the street. So with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Mayor, if I could.
Please.
It's been 2 weeks ago since I was down there. The condition of the sidewalks on either side of the street on 11th Street, they're okay? Good?
I'm not sure. I have not investigated those,
I mean,
but to my knowledge, they are.
Well, we're 2.5 blocks from, you know, the beacon that we have to the west there. So as long as, you know, the sidewalks are in good shape, somebody can get up or down, you know, kids get up and down the street to get across. I mean, you know, it seems to me that it works by going along with the Traffic Safety Commission recommendation. That would be the only thing that I would think that we would have to take into consideration.
Dave, do we have data on how much usage the other 2 beacons along 11th Street, how many times the button is pushed, and how much usage those have?
No, we do not. We do not have that data.
Is there a way for us to get that?
I think that the controllers at those locations can track how often the button is pushed and how long it cycles, and we can investigate that and get that information. But I think we have to program it and ask it to save that information, and then, you know, a week later or whatever, we can download that then.
That'd be helpful.
Comments? Questions? No? Okay. Thanks, Dave. Public comment on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Katie Walsh. I'm on the board of the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association, and I did tell you that I would bring this up at our meeting. Unfortunately, we had such a huge agenda, we could not get to everything, and I apologize. We had 2 projects from Tony Krasnick, et cetera, so we weren't able to discuss it. The PTO at New York School did discuss it tonight at their 5:30 meeting, and they feel like this is a park issue, and on the person who submitted the proposal's Facebook page, they talk about it as a way to get kiddos over to Hobbs Park, much more so than to get kids to New York School or Central or wherever they're heading. So we've only been able to talk a few board members right now, so it's pretty initial. That perhaps it would be better to look at a crossing at the Burrows Creek Trail once that will extend further towards the river. If the kids crossed at 11th and Delaware and headed north, they would still have to cross Delaware to get over to New York School. And Delaware's become a very dangerous street to cross because of all the new traffic, and it's now a de facto truck route. And the walking school bus at New York Elementary takes all the kids west on 11th Street to the existing beacon, and that's where they cross right now. So the conclusion, not official, from a few people is that, would you please table this? Allow us to have our traffic subcommittee at East Lawrence discuss it, go back to the PTO, try and make contact with the person who submitted it, and just see if there's a real need.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure, thanks, KT. Additional public comment? All right. So we can program the existing beacons to keep track of how many times the button's pushed. Hopefully people won't just push the button, they'll actually use it.
Shifts.
Yeah. There is already a beacon at the Burrows Creek Trail.
And then another one at, where's the other one?
Between New York and New Jersey
Yeah.
Street.
And I drive that route to work every day and leave for meetings. I mean, I've, gone in early and stayed late and been there at every possible time, I think. And to me, they don't get a significant amount of usage, but I remember you said at the last meeting that a lot of people do use them, and if it's going to keep people safe, then obviously, it's worth it. But I'd just be curious to see, with 2 of them already on that street, do we really need a 3rd one if, they're not getting hundreds and hundreds of uses? So to me, it'd be helpful to have that data.
Okay. Anybody object to tabling this item?
One more comment.
Yeah.
Do you know the traffic count on that street? 'Cause if we don't, then we ought to maybe get the traffic count too.
7,800 vehicles?
Yeah, you got it. On page 8.
In July, when we did the count, it was 7,800 vehicles during that 24-hour period.
And for a collector street, is that a lot, average, or a little?
That's pretty typical, but it might actually be a little bit low, as it was during the summer when there's not as much traffic in town. During the school year, there might be a little bit more than that. Not a high percentage more, but it might be up closer to 10,000 during the normal year.
Thank you. Oh, one other question. What does one of those rigs cost?
Based upon the prices we're getting for the one that we are in the process of constructing at 10th and Connecticut, it looks like it's just under $50,000.
And a stop sign costs
A stop sign?
Yeah. $50?
$100 or so, including installation.
There's a difference.
$50.
Yeah.
$1,000.
You want a motion?
Sure, with a motion to do whatever.
I'd make a motion that we table this item indefinitely.
Second.
Okay, motion to table the item indefinitely by
Well, go ahead, and now.
by Vice Mayor Amick, seconded by Commissioner Farmer.
Are we still requesting information from staff, or are we just dropping that?
No, we're gonna get the
From,
count.
The counts from KT,
Okay.
look at other information.
Okay, so when we get more information, we can bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay, good call.
Okay, so there's a motion it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Dave. All right. Next item on the agenda is consider a draft agreement with the Lawrence Community Shelter regarding a loan of $725,000 and consider authorizing the publication of an amendment to the 2013 budget and set October 8th, 2013 as a public hearing date.
Mayor, members of the commission, earlier this year, you received a request from the Lawrence Community Shelter for a loan. We have had some discussion during our budget preparations and deliberations and then decisions regarding that request. At that time, we conceptually told you that we would recommend that we would, if there was commission support, we would have a process whereby we would spend down fund balance and appropriate funds and structure an agreement for your consideration. With the close of the budget process, we've been back at a number of different items. You see that the dollar amount has gone up from what was originally discussed, and the community shelter representatives here will explain the need for that. We have a memorandum there from Casey in regards to the funding sources. For that, we have expenditure authority in the general fund for a portion of that. We do not have expenditure authority in the special alcohol fund. So we would recommend that you establish, if you desire of proceeding with this, a public hearing date to amend the budget. State law provides that we can amend an existing budget if we have the revenue, which we do, but we don't have the expenditure authority, which we don't. So at the public hearing, after we've done the appropriate notice, you would then consider amending the special alcohol fund to provide us with additional expenditure authority. We have ample expenditure authority in the general fund, but we don't exercise that because we don't spend down that transfer for fund balance, but we've got that authority. You see the draft agreement there. There are probably a number of different policy items in regards to that you should consider as we look at this item. One of the items is obviously the length of term of the loan. We've set out in this draft agreement that it would be based on a 30-year amortization, but it would be 15 years of payments and then a balloon payment after 15 years. We think that that's appropriate given the age of the structure and time horizons and such. So we think that makes sense. Probably major policy issues, whether or not we want there to be a mortgage or collateral. That's your decision. We drafted it without that. I think that gives the community shelter maximum flexibility in regards to the use of their assets. It also doesn't tie us directly to that building. It does on the negative side is we don't then have collateral for some reason the shelter went out of business. We would be in a situation where we didn't have a very good means of collection because we wouldn't have that collateral. So there's a policy issue there. I think we have got a good relationship, an operational relationship with the shelter. I think they're trying to be good stewards of their resources. They didn't ask for a grant; they've asked for a loan. There's a payment of a healthy portion of the principal within essentially a year of this agreement because they believe they're going to be able to get sizable donations that will reduce that. So that's the structure that you have this evening. There's probably other details that we can go into. I think it's always important to remind ourselves about the work that the community shelter does on behalf of the community. We do provide funding source. We are a funding source for them through a number of different resources, but they provide a very valuable service for the community and for community members that need that service. So that's background. Casey's back there. Am I missing anything of major importance on that? Thank you. Appreciate Casey's work getting us to this point, and City Attorney's Office and looking at the loan. So I know that Joe is here. I think Lauren is here. So we'd invite them, Mayor, if it's appropriate for them to make any comments as well.
Sounds good. Please.
Good evening, Mayor Dever, Commissioners. Thank you very much for considering our request for this loan. Very briefly, I'm just going to tell you some of the activities and some of the good news from the shelter program and some of the ways that your support has gone to help the folks who are homeless in our community. And Joe Baker, our treasurer, is going to talk about the numbers around the loan. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to let you know, under the different program areas this year, in the first 8 months of the year, in the housing area, we have housed 147 people. That's a tremendous number. And a lot of that number is families. We have, at this very moment, 39 people in our family program, and 17 of those are children, ranging from newborn babies to one student who is in high school. So we serve the whole gamut of folks, but serving families is where there's a lot of pressure. We're getting calls every day for families who are seeking shelter. In the employment area, we've gotten 61 people into permanent jobs. And one of the exciting things is we have a new full-time person, a second full-time person working on employment and jobs for us at the shelter. And we're working on a thing called LMAP, Lawrence Moving Ahead Program. This is a model that we've taken from Boston and also from Topeka. It's a 13-week program where folks go through classes. It's building self-esteem and training them or preparing them for going into the job market. Half of it is in classrooms, situations at the shelter. Another half of the 13 weeks is internships in businesses around the community. So it's a new model for Lawrence. It's been around some years in some other communities, but we're excited to get it set up and going here in Lawrence. So that's something that's being in the new shelter, having the elbow room, having the place to put some of our ideas into operation has been exciting for us. Under benefits, 29 people have applied for disability. Under intervention, 18 people have gone to detox or rehab. 50 people have gone to mental health treatment, and we've given 609 prescription assistance forms, various ways we help people get prescriptions filled. One of the telling numbers that I think you'll find interesting, Chief Tarek Khatib is on our board of directors, but there's no connection between what I'm going to say here. At any rate, the number of police calls to the shelter this year so far in the first 8 months has been 11, versus last year in our old location, the number for the first 8 months was 64 police calls. So that's a significant change in that number. And the other thing I want to say, which is something that we're dealing with, people ask me oftentimes before we moved, how many people are going to go when you move way out there, you know? And I think maybe I mentioned this to you before, and the answer is almost everybody. We are busy, we are full almost every night, but we're doing well. It's a good building. It's a facility that works. We have the elbow room for programs. We have the place for families. We have the separation. We have the dining room to feed people. So I just reporting to you that in many ways, you know, it's working, and with your support. And thank you. So Joe will take it on as far as the numbers go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd.
To repeat what Maureen has said, excuse me, Mayor and Commissioners, we thank you a lot for the support that you have had prior to this meeting for the shelter. I will share numbers and answer any questions you might have about the finances. But before that, I want to remind you of what the objective of the shelter is. The objective of the shelter is not to warehouse or house homeless people. It is to provide a way for these people to get out of homelessness. And Lauren and the staff has done a magnificent job in moving people who are homeless in our community into jobs, permanent housing, and a better way of life. Having said that, I could give you some historical numbers about how we got to the position where we need to come ask you to make a loan to us. But I think most of you are aware that we purchased a building. We had estimates on what it would cost to rehab that building into a homeless shelter. We raised a substantial amount of money, an amount that we thought was adequate to accomplish this goal. It turned out to be inadequate. In addition to it, we found that there was some structural repairs that were needed, that the roof needed to be repaired. We have obtained multiple quotes and estimates on what it will cost to do that. One of the side effects of putting the new roof on the building, besides stopping the leaks that are leaking into the areas where people are trying to live, is that it will improve from a financial standpoint what it costs to heat and cool the building. As all of you, I'm sure, have been there, it's a very large metal building. It was a warehouse originally, had very little installation in it. It has insulation now, but the new roof will help considerably in lowering those heating and cooling issues. We currently have a loan with People's Bank. It is not on a long-term basis. It's actually on a short-term basis. The payoff balance on that loan as of 10/11/2013 is $627,704, with interest running at $87 per day. We have a bid, actually a fixed contract to repair the roof of $98,311. That's where the numbers have come from in this request for the $725,000. On a 15-year amortization schedule at 2% interest, that makes the monthly payment by the shelter to the city of $1,850, thereabouts. This fits into our budget to move forward. It will give us a challenge to meet the balloon payment in 15 years, but the board and the people interested in the shelter believe that that's a very doable situation to meet that balloon payment. As Corliss has said, in the original discussion that we had, it was not intended to put a mortgage on the building. The board feels if that is something that's important, we really have no objection to that. We plan to be here, and we don't see that a mortgage causes us any problem whatsoever. I don't think the city wants to take over and run the shelter in the event that we did default, but there is an asset there, certainly. Stand ready to answer any questions you might have on the finances.
Sure, go ahead.
Joe, thank you for what you do for this organization too. I know you spend a lot of time, and certainly Lori, being the director. I'm not interested in the city taking a mortgage on the building, but one thing that does occur to me is that, let's say we all hope for the best and that everything works out, but at some point something happens that doesn't work. Someone is going to have to run a shelter in this city, either you, a new group, or the city, or some combination of all those people. I guess what I would ask is if, even though if we don't take a mortgage on the building, would it be advisable to not have anybody put a mortgage on the building? Because in the worst case scenario, then at least there's a building that's not encumbered by any kind of legal situation where it gets sold and maybe is not used as a shelter in the future. That's my only question I have, is that I'm not interested in the mortgage, but if you get out of the shelter business, someone has to be in the shelter business. And that being a good asset to use, then at least it's there and available to the next charitable group or municipal group or combination thereof that wants to come along and pick up and go on from where it is. That's my thoughts on this.
Well, Bob, I, again, don't have any legal background to say how that could work, but I would see no reason why it could not be in the documents when you did this, that to put a mortgage on the building, the shelter and the board had to have permission to do so from the city. And there might be a reason in the future that something would come along, such as an addition on the building, the need for more capacity increases, and we need to build. There is additional land there, but I would see no reason that you shouldn't make a requirement that if we wanted to do that, we had to have city's approval. Now, that'd have to fall to Corliss and legal staff to say whether or not we can agree to that, but I really don't have the right to speak for the board, but I'm sure there'd be no disagreement with that.
You see my point, though, is that...
Oh, absolutely.
And actually, the city at that point, if things fell apart, probably would not have been repaid in its entirety. And so if it was encumbered with an instrument that took it out of the shelter business, then we don't have a loan that's paid off, and then we've got to find something else to take its place. So that's my only thinking on this, is to try and keep that as the shelter into the future, and recognizing also the fact that you may very well need to expand that. I hope you don't, but it certainly could happen that you need to take and request another loan from a bank or a financial institution in order to expand.
Yeah. At this point, we'd have no intent of coming back to the city for a future loan, but again, I'm not sure that anybody knows what the future holds as far as that's concerned.
Joe, can you tell me what the current appraised value of the property, the building and property are?
I'm not sure I know that answer. I'm thinking it's somewhere around 2 million, but I should have checked that, and I did
Okay.
not.
Do you know what the current appraised value is?
I think it's in that neighborhood. It's,
Should I go to the Douglas
I
County
think
website?
it's
and
8
look that up?
acres? Is it what's the?
I'll check it out, Mike.
Okay.
There's 4 acres.
And the building square footage is?
25,000. It's sitting on less than half of the acreage there. And we paid approximately 1.7, is that right, for the building prior to the rehab. And
Okay, so Jeremy, you're going to tell me what the current
Get a
appraised
second.
value is. You have approximately 25,000 square feet under roof. And
That is correct.
you have approximately 4 acres of land that we're talking about.
yes,
Um,
10,000 of it is pretty much warehouse space right now. We had initially intended to find a tenant for that space. That didn't work out, and we've expanded into storage and usage of that space, but it still is something that we can rent if we have a good tenant for it.
So the land is appraised at $178,950. The improvements at $1.782 million for a total of $1.961 million.
That's closer than I thought I could come, actually.
And Joe, about the other side of the building, anything that we do with this won't inhibit you renting out the other side of that facility to any tenants, would it?
Not
Okay.
that I see, because all we're going to be doing is re-roofing the entire building.
Sure.
Paying off the mortgage at People's Bank at a considerably higher interest rate and on a short-term basis. So if anything, it would probably make it more rentable, because it does have roof leaks that puddle in the floors in certain areas in the building right now.
Mm-hmm. And so you originally anticipated using 10,000 square foot of the building for lease purposes to
Yes.
lease out. So you were going to occupy about 15,000 and then use the other portion for rental income. Is that part of one of the shortfalls, or can you explain to me how we got from not being able to cash flow this thing to where we're at right now? Besides the
Well, it's actually cash
$98,000?
flowing, as long as all we're doing is paying interest to People's Bank. I don't know how much of the historical information you want on it, but after we had rough estimates on what it would cost to rehab the building. We purchased the building. Those estimates were greatly understated. We had 8 bids to do the rehab. All 8 of the bids came in way over the amount that we had raised. We re-looked at the entire structure. We're able to get the rehabilitation of the building at about half of where the original bids came in. And when it was all said and done, that still left us with about $600,000 shortage in what we had raised that we thought was originally going to pay for the building and the rehab. And that's where we are right now.
Okay. So you've stated that the board and the organization itself does not object to the city having some sort of security interest in the property in the event that there was an inability to pay, or for whatever reason the shelter failed to exist in the future.
Sure. Again, I can't really speak for the board, but we had a meeting Monday evening, and I think that was the consensus, that if the city felt that was important to protect your interest, we would have no objection to that. I also like the situation that we sign an agreement that we can't mortgage it without coming back. And that works for us too. So whatever gives you the comfort feeling. What we want to do at this point is to get ourselves on a position where we can manage our budget, continue to raise approximately 50% of our total budget from non-governmental entities, and go forward and serve the homeless community that we have in Lawrence. And the payment works into the budget for us. Paying the $600,000 to People's Bank on a short-term basis does not work into it. And truthfully, if you turn this down, I'm not sure exactly what we will do.
Yeah. Have they offered to roll this note into a longer-term note?
Have they?
Yes.
No, they have not. The $250,000 that I believe is in the agreement that we will pay by October 11, 2013. That would be paid by current outstanding pledges. that
The
are
one that's
supposed
due
to
a
come
year
in.
from now, the payment.
Well, many of them are due this year.
Okay.
Those pledges will be turned over to you to pay that off. But the date was set because that should be the date that we have all of the outstanding pledges into us.
Okay, thanks.
I went over and visited with Lauren and was amazed at what you have gone from to what you have gone to. And I too have no big interest in having a mortgage, but I think to have some type of ask for you to have permission to get a mortgage would be important to protect the citizens. I guess the only question I have, you've answered several of them. Are you presently current with your loan that you have with the bank?
Yes. We have a number here, but I think we owe them $600 and some of interest, $673 of interest, which will be paid in the next few days. And we have not paid the last two interest payments that were due on 8/16 and 9/16, and that's with permission of the bank that we didn't pay them, and they're in this amount of money that we're
Okay.
wanting to pay it off.
Well, you know, when I do the calculations, it looks like you'd save about $3,600 a month or $100 a day that you could put towards people in their needs. And I think that's an important thing, and I'm in favor of this. So there are some difficulties with it, but I think the benefits far outweigh the difficulties.
Thank you.
Mayor, question. Joe, the entire site is 4 acres?
That's
Where the
correct.
shelter is. And how much land is the building sitting on, do you know?
My guess, it's 1.5 acres.
25,000 square feet.
Is it just one lot?
And the parking.
Yes, it's one lot. I've never had that question asked, but there's considerable space behind the building.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if it was divided like into 1 acre lots or
No,
if it was
no,
just one single
it's
lot.
one lot.
I guess where I'm heading is I'd probably be one of them that would ask for the mortgage to be placed on the property. And if it could be divided in such a way as that maybe that first 200 and a quarter be placed on the land, you know, that is vacant, you know, if we're talking about, how much did you say, Jerry? 178,000 on the land, and then the balance remaining on the building portion, that may be something that, you know, that I would consider there. Again, you had said that the first 225,000 that's going to be paid off a year from now, or anticipated to be a year from now, that is of pledges that have already been made or will be made over the next year, correct?
They're pledges that have been made, the payments have not been made.
Okay.
Many of them were 3-year pledges, and this would be the 3rd year on them. And we feel, when we talked to People's Bank originally, I think they gave us a number that they thought we'd collect like 80% of these pledges when they looked at what was coming in. I think we've been at 95% of the pledges.
Okay.
People have not been making their pledges. I could name the pledges that haven't been made on one hand.
Joe, will this amount cover you guys being able to put ceilings?
No, it will not. The amount of dollars that it would take to go in and put ceilings inside, now there's ceilings in the office areas and such, the other, is a gigantic number due to the sprinkler system and moving it and doing everything on it. It would save some on utilities, but at the same time, I think it's an astronomical number to do that.
Even with drop ceilings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of the sprinkler system and the way it's arranged,
Okay.
and the heating.
So just a question, I did the math on $87 a day, and over the course of 15 years, that's about $380,000. Can you just speak to what having that money in your operating budget would mean that you can do for people in our community?
Well, I'd have to have Lauren do that. I guess it would be easier for me to answer. The question is, how would we pay that $87 a day going forward? I'm not sure that that's in the operating budget. But what it would allow us to do is, by taking that out of our budget, continue to serve the homeless community and to expand to help them become more self-sufficient. I don't know what we would do with the $87. I mean, it's not money that's coming in. It's money that we owe that we really don't have at this point. Jeremy, does that answer your question at all?
Sure. I know for, leading a nonprofit myself, that when you start to take money that you're paying out, if you were able to roll that back into your operating budget, and to me, it's more so than that money doesn't go to pay bills. That money would go to programs that empower people to have more jobs and, to become housed. And I just think that's an important piece of this conversation, is that if right now, because you're paying that interest, it seems to me that that money's tied up with doing that, so that you're not able to do all the other stuff that you really should be doing and that you're good at. And I think that's an important piece for our community to understand.
Well, I think part of it, and Maureen would need to speak to it, but there is a plan to add additional counselors to help people with job counseling, to help these people. But at this point, it's not in the budget to fund it. We do have a separate committee working very hard to figure out how to expand our income figures, to add these people to the staff, to improve on getting more and more people self-sufficient. But to ask your question, if we had $87 a day coming in, I am sure Lauren could come up with really good ways to spend it. Right now, we're trying to stop having the $87 a day go out.
Sure.
Because keeping in mind also, that's only interest. That doesn't do anything to reduce the outstanding principal. Thank you all. If there are no other questions, we really appreciate your consideration. What you've done so far has been wonderful, and hopefully what you do next will be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Public comment on this item?
Greg Robinson, 3116 Trail Road. I would ask the commission to table this matter until it gets more information. It seems like every question that's asked of this entity, it's I don't know, or I don't have that information available, things of that nature. I think that before this commission makes a decision, which quite apparently has already been made, quite frankly, by the comments here tonight, I just think that the taxpayers, you as a body, owe the taxpayers the information so that they can at least see what you're doing as a body when you approve this in the coming weeks. The comments that are most discouraging to me are the fact that, we have two commission members already talking about they're not interested in putting a mortgage on this place. Why not? If we're going to become a bank, act like a bank. It doesn't mean you have to be an evil, malicious bank. It just means you protect your interest. You protect the taxpayers' interest. If this place is worth $1 million, and you're going to give them money, be protected. What's wrong with that? That's not evil. What happens if down the road, he's already mentioned tonight many times, we misjudged. It didn't work out this way. So how are we going to know it's going to work out in 15 years when that lump sum payment's due? What do we have to protect ourselves and our taxpayers? Nothing, apparently, according to Mr. Shum and Mr. Riordan. We don't want any protection. So what stops this entity from encumbering that facility to 80–90% of its value? Goes under, taxpayer left holding the bag again, as always. And again, I'm not against these gentlemen and what they're trying to do. What I'm against as a commission doesn't act like a professional entity. If you're going to act like a bank, be a bank. That's all I'm asking for. The other thing that's not out in the information here is that I think the agenda item said that there's a 5% construction loan. Well, construction loans are generally a little bit higher. It was asked by Mr. Dever, I believe it was, if whether or not there's been any offer by the bank to make it a permanent loan. I don't think it's the bank's job to ask if they want to make it a permanent loan. It's this entity's job to ask for a permanent loan and apply for that permanent loan for permanent financing. So the question should have been, have they asked for that financing, not the other way around. And permanent loans tend to be lower. So the taxpayer needs to know that it's not 5%, it might be 3%, but it's told to the public that it's 5. Well, it is 5 right now because it's a construction loan. So what's the information? We don't have it yet. Again, I've already kind of addressed it, but why the opposition to the mortgage lien? As I've stated, there's no reason that you have to be an evil bank. Just be protected, that's all. Protect the taxpayer who's giving up this money. One of the provision 5 of, I think it was page 2 of the agreement, that I think should be looked at is, it says that in the future, if the city makes any expenditures or allocations of funds to this entity, if they fail to make a payment, they get credit for the payment by withholding money that we promised to give them. That should not be in there. So we give them more money, or they ask for more money, you give them more money and they just refuse to pay, all they do is get a credit. What kind of protection is that for the taxpayer? Gentlemen, I think you need to table this matter until you get the information that sets forth all the parameters that you're asking. Some of the questions you're asking are good, but you're just not following up by demanding that information be provided. Mr. Orton, you speak of, in reference to spending this money that's a savings. Well, I noticed that we're looking at the clock. I noticed I'm the only one on the clock. I don't understand why I'm the only one on the clock tonight. I've watched every speaker speak. They've had all the time they've needed, but apparently if you're in opposition, you get a time limit. Is that the case?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay, can I keep going?
No, you have a 4-minute time limit.
Okay, so I'm the only one tonight that had a time limit?
I'm not going to argue. We can talk about it after the meeting if you want.
After the meeting?
Sure.
I thought this was a public meeting.
No, I said we can talk about your questions after the meeting if you'd like.
Oh, so the public doesn't get to hear anything, right?
Public comment too, that it gets near.
You could comment additionally. I don't recall any other speakers having more than 4 minutes this evening to answer your question.
You didn't have the clock running, sir. I watched it.
I don't run the clock.
Who runs it?
The gentleman sitting right there, and the people
Well-
who are commenting have the clock. People who present the items do not have a clock. Period.
Okay, I didn't see anybody else have a clock.
Yeah, that's it. You're the first public comment with a clock. Is there any other public comment on the clock? Okay, thanks. So we have some questions that were raised by Mr. Robinson, specifically the technical term for a bank is an offer in that a request is made by the borrowing entity and the agency provides an offer for that loan. Just FYI, I don't mean that the bank offered to take a loan. So, you can use semantics, whatever you want, but that's what I meant. So it's a bona fide offer by the bank to lend money on the property. Secondarily, I think, Commissioner Shum, Commissioner Reardon, I think you made a comment about whether or not you'd already made up your mind. I don't really know if that's the case or not, but in regard to not wanting to have a credit position on the real estate itself, I think you need to clarify that later on today so we can all understand and answer that question. And then I think the rest of it's just conjecture regarding whether or not we've made up our minds already. So, do you have any comments, questions? Yeah.
Well, first of all, you got to go back to, I keep going back to the question, who owns this problem? Who owns this social situation? And I firmly believe it's the people of Douglas County that own the social situation and need to take care of it. For our well-being and for the best of Lawrence and Douglas County, we found a group of people who have taken this on, who have provided the service for us that we would provide if they weren't doing it. And that's the shelter group that's represented here tonight. When we talk about, Mr. Robinson talks about being a bank and being good, just business people, agree with that. But in this case, if they weren't here, we'd be doing that and it'd be a municipal building And we'd be using our municipal bonding authority to underwrite the construction or the purchase and construction of that site and operate it. And it would cost us a lot more money if we have to staff it and operate it ourselves as opposed to a volunteer organization. So on the one hand, I don't have a problem at all with committing city funds at the rate of 2% with which we borrow for other municipal projects, because this is a situation that we will own if this group says we're done. I mean, we will own it. We and the county will own it. So I don't have an issue with that. Take a mortgage on it? Yeah, you can if you want to. I don't see that that's a big deal. What if they don't pay us? Are we gonna throw the homeless people out, sell the building, and say, we don't own the problem? We do own the problem. It's a social issue that the citizens of Douglas County own. So I don't think it matters one way or another if you take a mortgage or not. I'd rather leave it with an agreement if they want to come back and put a lien on it or mortgage it, not a lien, but a mortgage in order to expand, that we look at it and say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and agree to it. What I want to do is preserve the fact that that asset is maintained into the future as the shelter for Douglas County, and I don't want to lose it. And I can't for the life of me seeing the city commission throwing the shelter occupants out on the street to reclaim a loan. I mean, at that point, we're going to own the issue anyway. Just logically, I can't get around it any other way.
Yeah.
Commissioner, what you say, you're probably exactly right, but we're looking at a document that's got a 15-year life to it. And, the thing is, I hope to God, I'm probably retired, somewhere along the line, yeah, probably. But what I'm thinking is that, the document that we put together today is going to stand for the next 15 years. And, the thing is, place a mortgage on it. It's not going to go anywhere. You're absolutely right. But I think it's only prudent that, you protect the public taxpayers' money on this building. I mean, this is a loan. This is how we do it. You and I go get a loan, that's how it happens.
Well, the question I'd have then for you or for staff is that, so a majority of the commission wants to go that route, and we do that, and then let's say in 5 years, they want to build additional, they need some more capital to build out additional space. The asset is encumbered by our mortgage on it, so it precludes them from using the equity in that asset to then secure a loan to move forward.
Don't we have the opportunity to renegotiate at any time also?
Well, this is a new proposal tonight anyway, so, I don't know that.
You could, I mean, I think it's a likely scenario if they need financing for any type of future improvements outside of their fundraising, if they're probably gonna come back and talk to us. And we may have to renegotiate the instrument if we had an instrument on the property. So.
And Bob, one of the reasons that I suggest that maybe we look at the land separate, if it was divided in such a way, you could look at the land separate than the building improvements and place, mortgages, different on that particular, the two different improvements there, the unimproved property, the improvement on the building. You could do it that way. You could release part of it as the pay down happens in a year from now. There's a number of ways that we could do it.
I would think you'd have to go through a lot split then and have different.
But at this point, I didn't realize that it was just one lot. Okay. I'm sorry.
And even if there were several lots, there's not enough equity in the land to do anything for this. And I think, citizens and Lawrence and Greg brought up some good points. As a new commissioner, sometimes we say things or do things that maybe we shouldn't. My thought was that I'm in favor of having some benefit financially to this group, because I think they provide a great service. I think they save us a lot of money, much more than we have here. But mainly I have difficulty with a mortgage because of the encumbrance that it would have and the difficulties in the future, but also because of the fact that it could cause difficulties for the city that were financially much greater in the future if we had that activity, or we had a loan in that way. I think this has been a group who has made their payments. They say they can't continue to make those. They stated that they couldn't make them here. So I think when you look at all the aspects of this, is very unusual. And I think in general, I probably made an error in the fact that I should have waited till afterwards. I am in favor of this, but I always take into account what people say at the meetings when there are public comment. And I don't think any final decisions are made until the issue is voted upon.
Okay. Yes.
There's a lot to be said about the investment that not this commission, but the city commission and the county commission has made in a homeless shelter and helping to get it relocated out to a space that's more usable. And it's really easy to say we shouldn't do this if you don't know what the Lawrence Community Shelter does, and if you don't on a daily basis interact with people that are in need. And that's something that I think it's, this isn't about whether or not we're protecting the taxpayers. To me, this is about how well we're collaborating with a nonprofit, a private entity that is doing things a whole lot more inexpensively than what we could do. Bob, you're right on. I mean, if we were to make this a city building, paying pensions for the director, I mean, we all, said it today, Kate, $1 million increase that we had to find in our budget. It would be significant, and so I think that there's value in recognizing that it's best when a governmental entity partners with a nonprofit or a private organization who does their own fundraising, who does their own programming. Most people, unless you have experience in working with nonprofits and programming, if you were to just throw somebody in the line of fire, just like I couldn't run a barbecue business, a barbershop, or a pediatric facility, or an environmental company, it's just different. It's a different animal. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to partner with an organization that's done a tremendous job. And this is not handout money. And that's the thing that I think it's important to understand. I mean, we're investing in an organization that defines its success. And if I'm off here, make sure that you correct me. But to me, defines their success not by just being packed every night and solving, making sure that there aren't homeless people on the street, but recognizing that their successes are when people get jobs and when people get housed. And those are things that make me feel good about making an investment in such a great organization, because those are the right metrics by which we should be measuring things. If it's just a one-sided partnership, I love what Lyndon Baines Johnson said in his State of the Union address in 1964. He said that if we're going to successfully defeat poverty and its effects on people, it's going to take a cooperation from every federal, state, and local government, from the courthouse to the White House, in ensuring that these problems are addressed and identified. And I think for us to bow out and to say, well, deal with it. I mean, I understand what $87 a day back into a budget could do when you can invest that into programming to help people get jobs. It's a big deal. And what can't be calculated is the inherent return on investment from those $87 and helping people to get jobs that are paying taxes and shopping and filling up their cars with gas in Lawrence. And so to me, this is a very smart investment for us to make. And I think it's already been said, what is our role as a governmental body? Because Bob, you hit the nail on the head, and you've said it with almost everything you've said tonight. Like, we would be doing it. And I don't think we want to get into the homeless shelter business or the food bank business or the domestic violence rescue business. We have to empower organizations in our community that are doing that to not only do it well, but to do it better and to help empower them to be more successful. All that to say, on the mortgage situation, I think that when we've got the opportunity to tie the hands of the shelter by requiring that we have a mortgage on the property, that if things were to tank, that we would have some way to recover our assets by selling that building to recoup what we invested in it. We're not going to sell the building. We have a responsibility to take care of people. And if we didn't sell the building, we're going to be out, you know, whatever is not paid plus what it would cost us to staff. And I mean, so to me, why encumber them further? You know, we're not a bank. We're not necessarily acting like a bank. We're making an investment in an organization that's not asked for a grant, that's asked for a loan. So I don't see this as bank to, or lender to lendee. I see this as city government investing in a program that it would be a whole hell of a lot more expensive for us to do ourselves. And so for that, I think that this is a very smart thing for us to consider. And you guys do great work. Thank you. On behalf of the people that we serve that are patrons at the shelter, Maureen, please say thanks to your staff, and Joe, to the board. Thank you guys for the incredible work that you do for people in our community.
Thanks. Yeah.
Mayor and Commissioners, this item is structured tonight not for you to approve a final document, but for you to authorize us to have the public hearing date so that we can make the expenditure authority change in the special alcohol fund. If you so direct us, we can do that, and then we can also work on language that would prohibit a mortgage or transfer of the property without the city's permission. And then also we could work on language that would place a mortgage on the property and follow up the Vice Mayor's suggestion about some of the division of the different portions of the property. We've got a little bit of time, I guess is my point, to do that. We might not be able to work all of that out. You all can obviously decide what you want to do on that instrument this evening, but you could also direct us to work on that language. We can talk with Loring and Joe and others and see if we can't come up with agreed upon language for all of those different alternatives, and then on October the 8th, or even after that, you can decide what the actual language would be in the agreement. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
It is, thank you. So, there's a couple of questions I have that don't allow me to move forward, you know, with making a commitment. And one of those items is, I want an understanding as to what the total balloon payment is at the end of the process. If I'm looking through here, I'm not sure I see that. It's not laid out, and I think commissioners need to understand what sum of money will be owed the city at the end of this 15-year term.
$167,360.
Where's that?
$167,000.
Where's that at?
Oh, I just calculated.
Oh, okay. Well, I want it laid out, official document from the city identifying what the balloon payment would be to the city, assuming, one, that they pay the $225,000 that is due October 31st, and assuming that they don't pay and that amount is rolled into, and or for whatever reason they continue additional interest or accruing interest from that date. I want to know what this investment is, because I think it's not clear.
You want the complete amortization schedule then?
That'd be great. That'd be great, because I think that would be expected from us. I was trying to do the math myself. I've got a mortgage calculator in front of me. I've been doing the math too, but I want it to be straight from whatever's going to be on this document, and I'd like that highlighted in here if possible, so that everyone can see it. So that, and then the understanding is to a mortgage or having some sort of security interest in the property. I have asked several members of the board, and I continue to get the response, and I don't think that asking for a security interest in the property is a negative thing. I think it's a good thing, and I have two reasons why. Number one, if I was involved in this process, if this was my money, I would expect that, and I treat the City of Lawrence taxpayers' dollars like it's my money, and I would want some sort of guarantee that in the event that things did not go well, that we have some sort of protection from unforeseen forces that occur in real estate transactions. I deal with them I deal with real estate transactions all the time, and this is one of those deals that I can't get past for myself, which is why I talked to the board and asked them, and none of them objected to it. So I don't feel like it's an encumbrance or negative, but, you know, I could be persuaded otherwise. I personally don't believe that it's a huge deal. Second scenario would be that if we have some sort of interest in the property and we continue to, remember, we're only using a portion of this building for a shelter. The other portion, in the event that some other entity was to operate it, we could still generate revenue to pay for the money that the city of Lawrence loaned to this group, which, you know, is a viable source of income, and we would be in line to receive that revenue. And I feel like if the whole thing's not being used, and if there's a source of revenue to help pay for it, I don't think we'd be left holding the bag. I think we would be left holding an opportunity to generate income to pay the loan down if those, if for whatever reason we couldn't. And we would have the opportunity to take control of a portion of the building to make sure that it was rented out and it was paying, and there was some sort of revenue generated from it. So for me, it's a business deal because a portion of that operation is not being used by the shelter, and I think it's reasonable to say that in the future we could use that. You know, I'm all in favor of, moving forward with trying to come up with a reasonable way for the city to help this happen and to reduce the burden of interest. I know that the board did not plan on having a loan, and here we are with a quarter of the property's value being requested at this point in time. So I want to move forward with a loan. I just would like to move forward with a complete comfort and understanding that I would treat my own business and my own money with. Yeah.
Could we ask Joe and Loring if they would be able to furnish us with a statement from the board as to their preference of a mortgage or no mortgage or whatever they would feel most comfortable with working? And the only reason why I say that is, and I agree with everything you said. If it was my money and I was doing something with a third party, I'd want a mortgage on it until I get paid. That's just the way you do business. And lots of crazy things can happen with properties. I think this case is so unique and so different that, as I stated before, I just can't see what that does for us other than we become the operators of the shelter.
Well, we could operate the building on the other side that's not being used as a shelter, which is one thing that I see as an opportunity.
Right.
One of the reasons I would want the interest.
Well, anyway, if we were to ask them to come back with the board's preference, and maybe if you talk to a number of the board members and they don't care, then they don't care. So you can go ahead and move on it. I just don't want to take away, I don't want to, it's the thing that I have with this is that there seems to be a level of independence with which they are operating and a spirit of can do, and I really don't want to diminish that in any way. And to put a mortgage on, to restrict them in any way may diminish that, and it also may speak to the many people who give money to the shelter is, well, city's in charge now, the city's, let them handle it. I don't want to diminish any of the spirit of people contributing money to a bona fide independent agency. I do want to protect the taxpayers, but there again, I don't see that this building is going to be used for anything but a shelter in the future, no matter who operates it.
Fair enough.
Great.
That's a possibility.
So we're going to have Dave then have staff prepare both with mortgage, without mortgage, plus the information that you've asked for.
Yeah, the appraised value, just a business case for this so that I think everyone can understand exactly what portion of this we're talking about. And I don't think that was clear to the public because I had left, some people asked me about this and I couldn't really answer those questions. So those are some of the questions that were asked for. And then also my own desire to get this memorialized. And the last reason I bring that up is because of what Vice Mayor Amick said. This is a long-term agreement. We'll all be gone and somebody will need to understand what it is that we were trying to achieve. I think you've done a good job of conveying why we wouldn't, and I was trying to convey why we might, and then hopefully the agreement can be memorialized in writing so that everyone understood what we meant and where we were when we did this loan. So, but in general, I'm in favor of doing a loan. I think it's clear that we need to do it. It's our responsibility for all the reasons everyone elocuted so well earlier. I mean, this is part of the deal. We need to back this. I just want to make sure it's done in a proper business transaction, if at all possible.
The only other question I would ask staff in a legal way is if there would be an alternative to an official mortgage that would in some way protect our assets that we're giving them with the money, without just a mortgage, some type of an agreement with the entity that owns the building that would allow us to recoup those losses if it were sold for some reason, without having an official mortgage on it. So it would be of interest to me to see if we could come up with some agreement like that that wouldn't encumber them, but still protect the citizens. Because I think Greg makes a good point. I think the citizens of Lawrence need to be protected, but at the same time, if we don't do something, someone will have to come in and have some type of financial support, because they don't have the money to continue to pay 8%.
No.
I think that's been pretty clear.
No, it is clear.
Can we ask if either Joe or Lauren have any comments to everything we said?
Sure. Joe or Lauren, do you have a comment to any of the discussions we've had this evening?
Well, I think mostly, since you're going to refer it back to staff, that we can participate in those discussions, that we'll leave it for that. I just want to clarify, though, we do one point. The 10,000 square foot space that has been mentioned is not just for rental forever. I mean, we had talked about renting it for the first couple of years to help with our cash flow if we could find a tenant. It had a tenant when we first moved in there. They moved out because, in fact, the roof leaked and was damaging the product they were storing there. If we find a tenant, that's what we were going to do. But in the long term, we've always talked about using that space for jobs, for programs.
Sure.
So I just didn't want there to be a misunderstanding that was going to be forever a rental space.
Well, understood. I understand that. I just think for whatever period of time it would
Sure.
be viable, that would be a way for us to be
Right.
repaid in the event that there was any kind of problem and the shelter was still operating. Anything else, Joe?
Not really.
Okay.
You know, Bob's comment about coming back to the board, I think I can clearly speak for the board that they would prefer not to have a mortgage because of the unknowns going forward. I think they would secondly prefer that an agreement be structured that says we cannot sell or encumber the property without the city's permission as long as we owe them money. And thirdly,
Can you step up to the podium? 'Cause
I'm
people at
sorry.
home can't hear you. Thanks.
I'm sorry. You want me to start over?
Please.
I think I can speak for the board on this issue. I feel certain the preference is not to have a mortgage, and that's what they would say. Secondly, I think the second alternative would be to have some structure in the agreement that we cannot remortgage the property somewhere or to sell the property without paying off the mortgage to the city. And thirdly, if it comes down to the commission saying we have to have a mortgage to do this, I'm sure the board would be in agreement with it. But that would be our.
And can you get back from them or whatever, why you prefer not to have a mortgage on 25% of the property, when in reality, if you needed to just get a second mortgage to help with whatever it is that you needed to do, or somehow get I just want a clarification as to why they would prefer not to have a mortgage on the property. And you don't need to answer that now, but I would like that in a response, what the justification or reasoning is to the public so that we can understand what not having a mortgage on the property means to the mission of the shelter.
Okay. I would also mention that I think the appraised value you're looking at is not the appraised value that the property is actually worth at this point, because I believe that would be the appraised value before we did the actual improvements to it. So that's not the current appraised value. I don't know how to say
Sure.
that. That's last year.
As of the last transaction,
Yeah, that
probably.
would have been probably the value of January 1st of this year, of 2013.
Yeah. And most of the construction was done since then, where
Okay.
we spent roughly $1 million, round numbers, on the building. So it really hadn't been appraised this year, and being a not-for-profit, it's not that important to us what that value shows.
Right.
So, but we will respond to you as to the board's feeling on the mortgage.
I think it's understanding, because I tried to get an answer and I couldn't, so that's what, when I talked to somebody, they said, well, it doesn't really matter one way or another, so.
Yeah,
that's-
I'm not
yeah.
sure that there's a strong feeling on it, other than going forward as a partnership with the city. It seems like it would be less of a hassle not to have a mortgage. And I don't know anything about the legalities of having a mortgage or an agreement. That's
Okay.
something Corliss and staff would have to tell us.
Fair enough, thank you. Okay.
Mayor, I move that we continue this item to direct staff to get the information as indicated tonight.
Would you rather have a motion that would authorize the publication of the amendment? I think that we need to do that.
We think that the right process, if it meets with your approval, is that you direct us to authorize the amendment of the budget for setting a public hearing date for that amendment on October the 8th. That then authorizes to do the publication. That doesn't mean that you approve that budget amendment, doesn't mean you approve any agreement. Just allows us to start that clock on the statutory hearing. And then we've got a number of different items that we need to provide you with as far as language, a lot of research items to do that. This really is your first discussion about the terms and conditions of this proposal. You all talked about moving money, raising taxes, those types of things for this proposal as we worked on the budget, but you haven't really talked about the structure of our relationship. So your discussion this evening's been helpful, and we'll come back with language. We'll be talking with Joe and Loring about getting some additional information in regards to that. I think we've got good information about mortgage, no mortgage, transfer prohibitions, all those types of things, and we'll have that for you to look at on October the 8th. Doesn't mean that you have to approve it then.
So I'll withdraw my motion and change it to authorize the publication of an amendment to the 2013 budget, set October 8th, 2013 as a public hearing date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Shum, seconded by Commissioner Reardon. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Public comment of a general nature?
Good evening,
Hi,
Mr.
Mike.
Mayor, Commissioners. Mike Myers. I'm the chair of the Live Well Lawrence Healthy Built Environment Work Group. And we're engaged in trying to improve public health through access to healthy, active living type things. And I just wanted to have you guys rewind just a minute to the city manager's report. And I just wanted to, on behalf of the Live Well Lawrence leadership team, publicly acknowledge and commend the great work that was done by the Public Works Department and Director Souls on all the great sidewalk connectivity projects on 23rd Street, Tennessee Street, and also, excuse me, the 9th Street bike lanes. All that was really well done, and I think it's going to be really well received by the public, and it encourages active, healthy lifestyles. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Any other public comment of general nature? Okay. Seeing none, is there any future agenda items that require discussion this evening?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And any commission items?
I have one.
Yeah.
Be it that we're going to our conference tomorrow on local food production. I have a large bag of homegrown tomatoes that, because I'm leaving, I won't be able to use. So any of the staff, the press, or any of the participants want to take home some delicious grown tomatoes, I'll see you right after the meeting.
All right.
They are good.
It's good to pass out tomatoes after.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
Now,
great. We'll
oh,
take-
yeah.
Any other
Oh, yeah.
commissioners? Yeah.
Just one, thank Clinice Hills for recognizing the city's birthday.
Yeah.
159 years. Pretty proud place to live.
Very nice. Okay, and any other commission items? No? Calendar's pretty straightforward. What?
I just want to add that Commissioner Shum's not the only one who has tomatoes. The gardens at the shelter, we have a successful garden this year, and tomatoes is about the only thing that grew really well. We
Okay.
have a lot of tomatoes, so
Very good.
I can give you some tomatoes too.
Thank you. Tomatoes seem to be,
We'll have to have a tomato contest
They're
here.
going, they went good this year.
yes. Okay, and I think that's it. Remember, your comments regarding the rental registration ordinance are due next week, so thanks in advance for that. And is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Go ahead.
Is there a second?
Second.
Wow. Motion to adjourn the meeting by Commissioner Farmer, seconded by Commissioner Reardon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Good night.
Stay here all night.